Let's just start with the idea of defining fascism, because this book is sort of like marks a slight change in your perspective, or a significant change in your perspective as to its presence in this country.
Yeah, and thanks, Sam, and thanks for citing Sherman's March, which is movie formative for me too. And I feel like we should say to viewers, especially Southerners, it's a sort of a first-person narrative of a guy going and sort of reviewing all his failed relationships, which is not what this book is about, because times have changed. Or maybe it is. It's about reviewing our failed relationships as a nation, and I think obviously the most failed relationship is fascism. I've been writing about right-wing movements of various varieties in the United States and abroad for about 20 years. And for a long time, I actually resisted the use of the word fascist, as many on the left and liberals use. I said, there's more than one kind of bad under the sun. That was no kind of defense of, say, the first Bush administration, or denial that there aren't pockets and communities that experience fascism in the United States. But we didn't have that government. And in fact, in my 2008 book, The Family, which is about a fundamentalist group, and I said, and these were guys who actually after World War II went and recruited Nazi war criminals. I called it the F word, fascism. And I said, I don't think it's actually possible in America because of fundamentalism, because American fundamentalism, Christian nationalists, will never switch out the Father, God, for a Führer, a person on earth. And that's what fascism is, a cult of personality. I was wrong. I realized when I realized when Trump came down that golden escalator, oh, I think they're going to do this. The fascism that American fundamentalism has supported abroad has come home. And that now fascism just doesn't mean bad and authoritarian. Fascism means a cult of personality. It doesn't just mean violent. It means a kind of reverence and celebration of violence, the idea of regeneration through violence and a pleasure in violence. It doesn't just mean nationalism. It means invoking a kind of mythic past. It's a utopian project. It is a dream politics, a nightmare politics. And it is always about an enemy within. And United States right has always othered various groups, but it hasn't been quite as fully organized and openly organized around the enemy within, around a cult of personality, the reverence for violence, as it is now. And I think we have crossed over into a time when I and other very cautious academic scholars, historians of fascism say, who had reservations at first, say, yes, we are now dealing with an American fascism.
What is the fascism without that cult of personality? I mean, because, the thing that's, it seems so like it's hard to sort of parse out, like, theocracy, like what happens if Donald Trump, because when we talk about cult of personality, we're talking about Donald Trump, and it is almost as if like all of these things were, and in fact, this is what I was saying when he came down that escalator on that very night, was the suit has been tailored. And this guy just fits. So what is left if the guy exits the suit, but the suit's still there, right? I mean, the all the other stuff is not going away. So like, where does that leave us? I mean, because much of it is driven by some type of fundamentalism, although not. It's a self-identified fundamentalism, but it does not like sort of like adhere to the precepts of what we would constitute Christian fundamentalism per se.
Oh, well, it does. And I think that's one of the things people say, well, Trump's not very pious. And this is something I understood from spending a long time writing on the Christian right. They've long understood. And this is going back to the Bible, where there's a figure called King Cyrus, to whom Trump and the Christian right is frequently compared. King Cyrus is a Gentile, but he is used by God. God can use any tool. In fact, some Christian right leaders called Trump in 2016 God's chaos candidate. They called him a wrecking ball. But the point was to sort of smash some walls and build some others, right? Smash the wall of separation, church and state, which he did. This is by far and away, more than Reagan, more than any Bush, that was the most successful time for Christian right. And none of that goes away. That becomes part of institutions. But I think of, the suit's been tailored, right? I think of a pastor I met in Omaha, Nebraska. I went to a small mega church, like
this is Pastor Hank
Cunanan, something of a rising star in the prophetic Christian right, a guy who regularly appears with Lauren Boebert and General Michael Flynn, has a church with its own kind of militia, as more and more churches do. He believes that churches should be arming up for war, believes civil war is coming. And he says, of course, Trump is coming back, but he makes a distinction. He says, Trump is coming back, maybe the man himself, or maybe the spirit clothed in the flesh of another. It's the spirit of Trumpism. And I think this is something we learn from history and fascist movements. Trumpism is the threat. Trump may be the avatar of it. Maybe Ron DeSantis will be the avatar of it. There are avatars of it. There's avatars right here where I am. I'm in New Hampshire, and a right-wing family suing my children's school, trying to get a list of queer kids. That's the spirit of Trumpism let loose in the land. And I think it's what frustrates me so much about the old school political horse race reporting. This focus on Trump versus DeSantis, that's not the issue. It's focused on, well, maybe Trump's defeated and we're back to normal. No,
right.
We're in the Trumpocene now. We're in the age of Trump. And that means the struggle is going to be a long one.
Can you elaborate on the point about how his movement is still very connected to an evangelical Christian right line of thought? Because I returned to, I believe it was The Atlantic, profiling Mike Pence before the election about how a guy like him could support a guy like Trump. And really it comes down to, Trump being an imperfect vessel, but he's implementing God's grace by appointing these judges, right? But it's more than just the political strategy of it. It's also, I feel, as Sam was alluding to, it colors the way that his followers behave politically, I would also argue.
Yeah, I think Mike Pence, of all people, should understand this best. I'm not a political pundit. I don't make predictions. But in one instance, I was almost prescient in my 2010 book, C Street, which was also about this group of the family, this sort of, they're the folks who organized the National Prayer Breakfast, of which Mike Pence was part. And at the end of the book, noting that a number of their members had fallen to various sex scandals, I said, so none of these guys are going to the White House, but maybe in 2016, it'll be a little known Indiana congressman named Mike Pence. Well, it was close, right? And Pence he should understand why, though he doesn't necessarily win the big prize. Pence, for instance, was instrumental through that organization in arranging arms for the Sri Lankan government to commit really almost genocidal crimes against its own citizens. This is not a Christian government, but he believed that they were a means to an end. And I think there's a way that secularism has a kind of naivete about Christian nationalism, as if we imagine that they're somehow less savvy, less canny than the rest of us, that they don't understand that there are tools. Not only do they understand there are tools, the Bible is all about that, about God using imperfect men. This group, for instance, teaches King David, and I've heard Trump compared to King David too. King David, we know, he kills Goliath with the sling, but he goes on to become kind of an awful man who rapes his lead general's wife and arranges for his general to be killed. Christians know that, and that's what they understand. That this is the equivalent of Trump saying, "I could stand on Fifth Avenue and shoot somebody," or this idea that somehow we're going to take Ron DeSantis down by proving that he was present for force feeding in Guantanamo. They understand the brutality, and they've made their deal with it.